Hello friends, and welcome back to the garden. Nick here again, and I thought I'd just put together a little video on random subject matter pertaining to, we're several days into December. This is the 6th month of this new garden. And so I'm thinking about things that are coming in the spring. I'm wondering about what things are going to happen over the winter that I have no control over, but could go one way or the other, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. And so I just thought I'd walk around the garden and talk about just several different miscellaneous random things that are going on in the garden that we're thinking about. One of them is I've been busy over the last month planting a lot of the temperate plants. These are plants like this Walters viburnum, and let's see, I think that's wax myrtle right there, for example, a couple, and others that they're temperate plants, so they're not going to be hurt by any kind of a freeze or anything like that. So it's best for them to go in the ground now so that they can begin to get their roots situated before we get that really hot, really dry weather that's going to be coming in April and May. That's the gauntlet to me in Central and North Florida. It's April and May is the toughest time for plants to get through because of the combination of everything. The sandy soil that doesn't hold water well, the really warm temperatures, especially into May, but already starting in April, and the real lack of rainfall, with April typically being the lowest rainfall month of the year, and often in May we don't get a whole lot of rain either, and if we do get rain, it's not until towards the end of May usually. So April and May is a gauntlet. To prepare for that, you want to get all your temperate plants in the ground in the fall, even into the winter through December, January. It's not a bad idea to get them in the ground, and then mulch heavily like we've done here. Again, this is just free material that I've been picking up on the side of the road that people are just getting rid of their yard waste, but it makes great mulch, and it begins to build my soil. And so the combination of getting these plants in the ground and getting them mulched, watering them a little bit because it has been so dry. That's been my concern recently in the garden. Doing a little bit of annual vegetable gardening in these little raised beds here. Got the cabbages are coming along nicely. They really are growing well and starting to form little cabbage heads in there, it looks like. And even my wild Oregon kale, or wild mustard, whatever you want to call it. Wild brassica really is the best way to name it, just wild brassica. That's coming along, and cilantro and arugula. And the worm farm's doing fine. So these have been my concerns so far, now that basically the growing season is over, and we're in that time of year where everything's slowed way down. But it's a really good time to get ready for what's coming next April and May. As far as the unknowns, I don't know how my tropical plants are going to do this winter. I just don't know how cold it's going to get, how much more freezing activity we're going to see. I documented in a video before the freeze that we got already, and you can see how it hit the leaves of all these Mexican sunflowers. But as you can also see, it didn't hit them that hard because they're growing back. They're putting on all kinds of new growth. So all this green growth is new because all the leaves were burnt by that cold, and every single leaf on these plants for the most part is new growth just in the last couple of weeks since we had that freeze. Or maybe I guess it's been about a month, because that was in the early part of November when that freeze hit. I'm expecting almost for sure that it's going to get even colder before the winter season is done, and that could really knock these back. At that point, I'll go ahead and cut them off right at the ground and use them for chop and drop mulch, and beef up my mulching even more. And I've got about 30 of these Mexican sunflower plants around the garden that I can use for that. So that'll be quite a bit of mulch, and that'll be great. Hopefully the freeze won't be so bad that it hurts things like this Brogden avocado here. A beautiful little avocado tree. It's grown quite a bit. It's only about 18 inches tall when I planted it, and it's about 4 feet tall. So that did pretty good in its first year. You know, these chaya could get hit really hard by a hard freeze and knocked all the way back down to the ground, but highly unlikely that it'll kill the plant. It'll most likely sprout back from the roots in the spring. Look at the papaya. The papaya got really hammered by the cold. All the leaves died except for just the new growth coming out at the very top. So I don't know. I don't think that tree's got much of a future there, that papaya tree. But again, we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we've been having this Indian summer now. That's going into we're going to be going well into deep into December, mid to late December, at least according to the forecast, and with nothing even approaching going below 40 during that time. So who knows? Maybe these tropicals will do better now. And here's a winter Mexican avocado. Just a beautiful, real shrubby looking, real wide growth habit. That's excellent for an avocado. Makes it real easy to reach all the fruit, and it's real healthy and growing really well. So I hope it doesn't get too cold to hurt my avocados. You know, I do have a backup plan in place if that does happen, because I've got this Saijo persimmon right here next to it, and this persimmon will just take over this whole area eventually. And I hope they can coexist. The tropical tree right next to the temperate tree. I sure hope they can coexist in this spot. But if they can't, I know my temperate tree will pull through, as far as, at least with regard to the cold. Same thing over here. But is it gonna hurt some of my other tropicals? The cold, that is. You know, here's another papaya. I already gave up. If you saw my other video, I already gave up on the bananas. I just think we're just nowhere near tropical enough for bananas. So they're trying to grow back a little bit after I cut them and use them for chop and drop, but I'll just continue to cut that off and use it for chop and drop. The cassava more than likely will get frozen back all the way to the ground, and it probably will survive and grow another season or two. Eventually the cassava just will stop coming back. It doesn't keep doing that forever, but you can get 2 or 3 years maybe of regrowth out of those. Is it going to really cut back these tropical herbs? Okinawa spinach, longevity spinach, will it knock all this growth all the way back to the ground? If it does, that's okay. It'll regrow from the roots. It's not likely to get cold enough here to kill the roots. And all of this upper growth just becomes like green manure at that point, and just gives me a nice bit of mulch in here and lots of fertility in this soil. And by the way, here's another nice little wax myrtle I planted in here. Again, just getting these, trying to get these somewhat established before next April and May gets here. So these are just some of my thoughts walking around the garden and taking a look. These little young peach trees are flowering, and that's messed up. They should not be flowering in December. But you know, another year or two before I get too worried about fruit on the peaches, for the next year or two, I just want them to grow, and they should grow pretty good. You know, peaches are pretty short-lived trees, actually. They're, you know, if you can get, you're probably going to get about 5 to 10 years out of a peach tree on average. Are there some that grow more than 10 years? Probably. Some may not even make it 4 years. So that's a pretty short-lived tree. And I'm sitting here wondering, how late is it going to get in the year? Like I said, we're going to be going well into mid to late December without any kind of cold weather causing this mulberry leaves to drop. So who knows what's going to go on with that? The blueberries, and these are rabbit eye blueberries. I believe this is the Arapaho rabbit eye. Their leaves are still green and they're going fine. But yeah, I've been busy planting lots of things like these wax myrtles and sable minor just for the shade. Let's just walk around the garden and look at some of the rest of it. Again, all these Mexican sunflowers back here. You would think they're going to freeze at some point, and then I'll cut them all, use them all for chop and drop. The garden is going to look very different when all the Mexican sunflowers are cut down at ground level. It's starting to look a little bit like a forest in some areas, but it won't once all those Mexican sunflowers are chopped down at ground level. And of course, as a food forest gardener, I'm anxious for the whole garden to start looking like a forest. It's going to come though. By this time next year, it's really going to start to look like something. These mulberries are going to get much bigger, and they're already up at 6 to 8 feet, all my mulberries. And lots of my other trees are going to be growing pretty fast too. Even these chestnuts, like this guy, he'll put on a couple of feet next year probably. And yeah, when the cold hits, is it going to get cold enough to go ahead and burn off all of these fig leaves? Probably. You just don't know from one year to the next exactly what's going to happen. And that's why it's a good idea to have a greenhouse if you're in Central or North Florida. Many of these plants that I grow, I propagate. I get new plants going by cuttings usually. I get them started in pots. Let's go into the greenhouse and see what's going on in here. Oh, yeah, this is where I'm just going to keep my katuk in the greenhouse every year in the winter. So I decided to grow katuk as a potted plant here in my location. And it doesn't look like much now. I pruned it back pretty good because I transplanted it into this pot. But I expect this will grow pretty large, probably get up 6 feet high in this pot and wide also. I'm just got some frog fruit that I just started propagating. It's not the best time of year to propagate frog fruit. It'll grow a lot faster in the warmer seasons, but I have a plan for this over my septic field in the front yard. I just wanted to get them established in pots until probably around May of next year. So when I'll put those out in the yard, and all of these pots should be really lush with overflowing frog fruit by then. And same thing with this dune sunflower. I'm going to use it for the same job. But back to what I was saying, as far as potting up some of the tropicals, that's what we have here with the Okinawa spinach, and there's Okinawa spinach there, and longevity spinach there, and Suriname spinach. And I just have other plants that are really temperate plants, but they're in pots, and I just wanted to give them a mild winter while they're young and in pots, and I'll plant them in the ground in the spring. So firebush, native Florida firebush, wild coffee plant. There's some examples of some plants that I'll put in the ground in the spring, and then this time next year they should be ready for the cold weather. This is a plant that is technically a tropical plant. It's called white sapote. A little leaf there. White sapote, and it is a tropical plant, and it's A mature plant is supposed to be good down into the low 20s, similar to a Brogden avocado. I'll be planting that out in the ground in the spring. That way it gets a chance to grow for a good long warm season before it faces its first winter next year. Some rosemary plants I'm just wanting to get a little bit bigger before I put them in the ground, so I'll put those in the ground next spring. And some Turk's cap hibiscus. This is a Florida plant. It is somewhat cold sensitive, so that's the reason why I'm just growing these in the greenhouse until next spring. Then I'll put them in the ground. But it is a good idea to have a greenhouse in Central and North Florida. There's so many things you can do with it. Let's walk out on looking at the Turk's cap hibiscus. That reminded me. This is a good time of year if you have a grassy area that you know you're going to want to plant something in the spring. And I've got that going on right over here. The Turk's cap hibiscus I want to plant right here because they're going to get a decent amount of shade underneath this big live oak tree. So since I know next spring I want to plant them here, it's a good place to go ahead and throw down some mulch. Because this is just you can see what's right next to it here is just grass, just wild grassy stuff. But if I just cover that deep in mulch, it'll begin to just cover up the grass and begin to convert this to a non-grassy area. And then I'll get those Turk's cap hibiscus right. That's where I've got these 3 flags here. It's for them. Let's see, what else? I've got, in parts of my garden, I've got flags. There's another couple right here. The reason why I put these here is just to remind me that I have future plans to plant things in those locations. Like right here, for example, I'm gonna put one of those fire bushes. And this is where I want to put the white sapote, and you can see it's pretty close to the back south side of my house, so maybe it'll be a little bit protected from the cold right there. Like I said, it's supposed to be good down into the low 20s, similar to these winter Mexican and Brogden avocados. So if it ever gets cold enough to wipe any of those out, it'll probably wipe out all 3. But hopefully if any of them can survive, then all 3 of them will survive. We'll see what happens there. It's a time of year where it's a good time to reflect and think about where you want to go with your garden next. I have all of my trees in place now. And I would say I have many, if not most, of my shrubs in place now. So next year is going to be about mulching, chop and dropping, and getting more herbs into the garden. One thing that's nice about this warm weather we're having is that this Mysore raspberry, it's growing like it still thinks we're in the growing season. It's growing nicely. It's a beautiful plant. I just put these in the ground, heck, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they are growing. They're looking good. Good looking plant. And got them trellised up. These Mysore raspberries have some, ouch, that hurt. They've got some pretty harsh stickers on them. But they make a lot of fruit. So, and they just grow really well. And I can see that they do. These are growing great, and they like it even better in the warm weather. But just preparing things for next year, these thornless blackberries, getting them mulched real well, getting them in the ground so that those roots can get well established before that challenging hot, dry spring comes along. Here's some more. But I've got more spots back here where I've got these little flags. Sometimes I have a flag just because, for example, I've got a plant. I want to make sure I don't step on it. My dog's always running around back here in this yard, so she can knock over plants and step on plants, and I'm thinking it might be a little less likely that she's going to run into it. If there's a little flag, she might go around it. Sometimes that works. Here's an example of one that's just in a tomato cage. And yeah, these are just my nopali cactuses. And they're too small right now. They don't show up real good. This one's starting to get a little bigger. You can see it better. I flagged it back when it was smaller. So that's the purpose of some of the flags, is just to help me see where a small plant is growing in the grass and the weeds. This is some goldenrod, a native Florida butterfly plant. Great for pollinators. Beautiful yellow flowers that have all turned to these seeds now. And my intent here is I'm hoping that this will self-seed back here. You know, ultimately this will be a shady forest, which isn't really goldenrod territory. But in the next few years, while it's still pretty sunny back here, maybe this will self-seed and spread around and help the pollinators. That's my thinking there. You know, I've got plants in the ground like this Yaupon holly. Hopefully it's done a good job of getting itself established this year, and we'll be ready to actually put on some growth next year. We'll see. I wonder how many of these beauty berries are going to drop and start new plants somewhere in the garden, or birds will eat these and fly off with them and deposit them somewhere. There'll be new beauty berry plants coming up around the garden. We've got some interesting things going on back in here. There's volunteers. Like, this is a lantana that just completely volunteered, showed up on its own. And that's good. I like lantana. They flower really well, and the pollinators really like lantana. Back here, I've noticed that amongst these big oak trees, I've got some volunteers like this cherry laurel. So cherry laurel, it's a good shrub for wildlife. It's an evergreen native plant. It's also called Carolina cherry laurel. So that's starting to show up on its own. I didn't have to do anything. It just showed up. By the way, these little stacks of pallets, I had a project that I was using the pallets for, and that project came to an end. I didn't need the pallets anymore. So I just decided to stack them up in a couple of spots around my garden just to provide a little sanctuary for wildlife, lizards or beetles or whatever it is, a little place for them to live. And this one back here serves a dual purpose, really. I stacked these pallets up right here, again, as a little wildlife sanctuary thing, but also because this is a very far back line of my property here, looking back all the way back to the house. And I don't get back here to water things as much as I do. You know, generally, if it's closer to the house, I'm able to water it more, and the further I get away, the less I can water it. And so I put this Napier grass and this sweet viburnum in here just as a privacy screen on this back fence. The pallets provide a little bit more moisture in the ground underneath this stack of pallets here. So they've got a little bit more moisture that their roots can reach right in there. So it helps with that too. So yeah, this is just sort of my little December. I think what I'll probably do is every few months or so, I'll probably do a little random walk around of the things I'm thinking about as a food forest gardener. Just a random walkabout in the garden, different things going on. It's amazing to me that here we are in we're gonna get into mid and even late December probably, and we're still gonna be looking at flowers and the tropical Mexican sunflower plant, Tithonia diversifolia. We're still gonna be looking at growing like it's still in the tropics. But that's the crazy thing about gardening in Central and North Florida. You're not really in the tropics, but you almost are. You're not really temperate, but bottom line, you actually are temperate, but it's warm temperate. Sometimes it feels like you're in the tropics. So finding that balance between growing the tropical plants, like we have a bunch of over here close to the house, versus the temperate plants. And the more I look at it, the more I'm finding plants that do fit that little in-between. Here's a good example right here, the cherry of the Rio Grande. It comes from Brazil, but it comes from the highlands of Brazil. And it's not really a tropical plant. It's cold tolerant. It makes a tasty little cherry fruit. But it's subtropical to warm temperate, and it actually fits our climate really well here. This is another one right here. This one looks a little more, I don't know, chlorotic than that one. That one's just gorgeous. And this one looks, it's healthy, but it's not as robust and healthy as the other one. The only difference I can think of between these two is that this one's up here in open sky where it gets a lot of late afternoon sun, whereas this one, not so much. In late afternoon, this one's in the shade cast by this big oak tree. Other than that, there's really no difference in these two plants and how they've been treated and how they've been watered. Well, not treated, just how they've grown, the growing conditions, how they've been mulched and watered. No difference. So possibly it's cherry of the Rio Grande prefers more shade, at least more shade than this one's been getting. I think that may be what's going on there with that. Okay, I think that's about it for today. I'm feeling like I'm kind of caught up on a lot of things. You never have enough mulch, but I'll be getting a lot more mulch as soon as we finally get that freeze that really knocks down these Mexican sunflowers. At that point, all this becomes mulch material. So if mulch were money, I feel like I'm a rich man. I've got a lot of mulch here. And things have really slowed down in the garden. Things are not growing that fast. I've got a few annual plants over there that I can spend a little time with. And for me, my biggest task right now is just opening up and closing the greenhouse and making sure the plants inside the greenhouse are getting the water they need. And, feeding the veggie scraps to the earthworms. And just and by the way, this is another avocado, and this guy right here, I feel bad that I put it here. This is a Russell avocado, not known to be as cold tolerant as my other two. And a Russell avocado, I don't know if you've seen them, it's like a really long, elongated avocado, almost looks like a zucchini. It's real long. And it's out here where it might get pretty cold for it. I don't know. If it does get frozen and die, I do have this little American persimmon planted right here in this spot. And even though it's really small now, this little persimmon tree is actually, let's see if we can get our hand on it there. That little persimmon tree is actually going to be ultimately one of the biggest new trees in my garden. Of course, not as big as these oaks. They'll always be ahead of it. But it'll be trying to catch up to the oaks in size. So that baby will take over right here in this area. And so yeah, what's going to happen? Is the Russell avocado going to make it through our winter this year? It did pretty well in that freeze. You can see where it got a little bit of leaf burn. But overall, it didn't fare badly at all. But that was a pretty light freeze, and it didn't last very long. Only lasted about an hour or hour to 2 hours, 2 mornings in a row, and that's it. We haven't had anything close to a freeze since then. In fact, that brings up another thing I've been thinking about is, am I even going to get enough chill hours this year? You know, most of my trees are still pretty young, and I'm not that concerned with fruit production next year. It's the year after next that I'll be expecting some decent fruit production from things like this plum tree right here, and the persimmons and blackberries and blueberries, all the things that need mulberries, all the things that need chill hours. Yeah, this plum tree, it's a pretty tree. But I don't know, with climate change, are we getting less chill hours than we used to? I guess we probably are. Doesn't mean we're getting fewer hard freezes. It seems like those polar vortex events might actually be happening more often. So I think that's what they're predicting. The climate models are predicting that even though it's getting warmer on average, you could also say it's also getting to the point where the USDA hardiness zones really, you know, they've been changing those zones. Like this used to be 9A where I'm at, and I think now it falls under 9B. But the way they calculate that zone, they use statistics, and the way it's calculated, it's not about those polar vortex events where it gets really cold. And that's the bottom line when it comes to plants and what they can take, you know, the hardiness zone and what kind of plant can live there. It shouldn't be about long-term average temperature type thing, because that's not what it's about. It should be about, are you going to have those events that kill the plants? And if the events are actually happening even more frequently, even though the overall temperature is getting warmer, then it makes me begin to question, what is the usefulness of the USDA hardiness zone, or at least, let me put it this way, the limits of how useful USDA hardiness zones really are. Anyway, I guess that's enough of my rambling and thoughts on the garden. Thanks for joining me. I just want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. I think when I looked today, we were up to 66 subscribers. I just started this, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So thank you all so much for subscribing and joining the channel. Please take a minute and maybe give us some likes, and think about sharing the channel, and maybe see if you can get others to subscribe. Wait till that loud truck goes by. You know, if you care about things like this, if you care about protecting the environment and rewilding and growing food in a responsible way that's friendly to the environment, then the more you can like and share and get subscribers to join us, the more YouTube will take this content out there and present it to more people. So if that's important to you, please like and subscribe. I sure appreciate it if you do. Until next time, everybody, y'all take care now, and happy gardening.